Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we have 2014 Chevy Malibu and we have two disturbing messages: service stability track as well as another one, service brake assist. And as you can see, ABS light is on and traction control icon is on too. So let's take a look what's going on. Okay, so I have here ANCEL Maxicom scan tool. We will give it a quick check. I will leave a link in the description to the tool, to the parts that you will need. Obviously, this is on the more expensive side, but I will leave also a link for the cheaper one that everyone can afford. Right now we're just decoding VIN information, and it's 2014 Chevy Malibu 2.5 liter. So now we will just give it a quick scan through all the systems. We'll go into diagnosis, auto scan. Okay, so we have 5 faults on the brake control, 3 on the power steering, and 1 on the multi-axle acceleration sensor module. So let's check this one. Equipped. Our codes. So there are a few codes, but we are interested in the current one, and it's left rear wheel speed sensor circuit signal erratic. Go back. It tells us that something wrong with the ABS sensor at the back left. Now we'll go to the steering control module and history. So this one was current before, invalid data received from electronic brake control module malfunction. So in a previous video, if you watched, we replaced the ABS sensor and those errors came back. So I started cleaning up the ABS magnetic ring, and I'll show you. Here is the new one. So that one seems like entire top part was kind of missing. So when I started brushing, those small pieces started to come off. So we will replace this wheel bearing and we'll see if that's fix our issue. So this is Moog part, and I will leave a link in the description to it. And let's take a look at the last code. Multi-axle sensor module, trouble codes, lost communication with electronic brake control module, history past. So this is historic. Alright, so let's get to the wheel bearing. Right, as the first step, we'll remove the wheel. That's 22 mil socket. I'm using 1/2 inch impact. Link in the description to the video. If you do it with manual ratchet, you can either do it while the vehicle is on the ground or apply brakes. Yeah. Just collect those nuts. Get this wheel off. Sometimes it might be really stuck. Depends if there is any anti-seize applied or not to the central bore. Okay, next we'll need to remove this upper control arm, whatever it's called, for a few reasons. There is a bolt that holds the wheel hub to the knuckle, and also it's on the way of the caliper bracket bolt, which is weird, but it is what it is. So we'll just use 21 mil socket, or otherwise 13/16, and we'll get that off. So the nut is off. Might be quite difficult to do it with manual ratchet, since this bushing can be dampened a bit, but with impact works quite well. Okay, now we'll get the caliper bracket bolt removed. It's 18 mil, and there's still not enough room for the impact, so we'll just use 1/2 inch ratchet. So this is loose, and now we'll go and remove the bottom one. Sure if you can see it just at the bottom. It's always a good idea to remove the bottom one first, because if you do it opposite and you have your face by the caliper and you remove this one, then you try to unbolt this one and it hinges basically and hit you in your face. Not that they've done it, but just saying. Okay, so also be prepared to have a piece of wire, a bungee cord, so when you pull the caliper together with the bracket off, you have the place to hang it. Oh, this is tight. Just use a little pry bar to pry it off. I don't understand why this is so tight. Maybe the parking brake doesn't seem to be seized. I hope you don't need new pads. I don't know, maybe it's just because of that lip. So here's my hanger, and I will just hang it aside so it's out of the way. We just don't want to put too much pressure on this hose. Alright, next we need to remove this T30 screw, and the trick here usually is to give it a really good slam before you try taking it off, and it's T35. Oh, actually T30, sorry. Right, T30. I have broken probably a dozen of those bits until I figured out that a few good slams makes a real difference. So now the rotor comes off. It's not too bad yet. We'll just put it aside. And here's our bearing. So let's get behind and I will show you those 3 bolts. Alright, so we underneath the vehicle, and you can see there are those 1, 2, and 3 just over there. Those 3, this is the 3rd one, this is the 2nd one, and there is our new ABS sensor. So we might need to pull it out just in case. And we'll remove those 3 and then we'll get the bearing out. And you can see those gaps on the magnetic ring. The weird thing is that when I was replacing sensor, all those pieces were still in place. But when I sprayed it with brake clean and started wire brushing them a bit, they started to fall off. Okay, let's get that sensor out first. To get the sensor out, I just use 10mm socket and pull it out. So you can see some anti-seize. Some good guys applied it in a previous video. In many cases, if the vehicle is older, it's almost impossible to get that sensor out without breaking it. Now let's do those 3 bolts. I'll give it a try with the impact and a swivel. See if I can get those off. And those are 18mm, same as the caliper bracket. So this one is really tough because there is a shock on the way, so we can only get the bottom one off. Okay, one is out. Looks like there was some Loctite on those, so let's do the top right to left one, the rear one. Okay, top rear one is out. And the top front one, I'll need to do it manually. It shouldn't be too difficult to accomplish. Use probably a shallow socket, 18mm. It's kind of in such a weird spot. There is not much room because of the shock and lower control arm. So make sure that you have a good ratchet. I think this one is like 3-degree turn, 120 teeth. Otherwise you would need to remove probably the shock. Okay, let me get that out. This will take a while. Alright, so the last bolt is out with a little bit of pain, but is out. Alright, so now we need to get this wheel hub wheel bearing off. We'll just try hammering it. I would say you want to be careful not to damage the magnetic ring, but that's why we're replacing it. It's already broken. It seems like the dust shield is already loose, so that wheel bearing is moving. Here it is. Okay, let me show you this bearing. So you see, like, all those pieces are just peeling off. Like, first it looked like there was tons of grease on top. So when I start cleaning, it started to peel off. So hopefully this is the reason why we're getting those errors. So at this point, we'll go ahead with the probably wire brush on a drill, clean this out, and put the new bearing in. Alright, so we'll give it a quick brush to remove all that oxidation. And that's probably one of the reasons why I want to remove that ABS sensor. So it's out of the way, and we need some dust masks. Alright, so the majority of the oxidation is removed. There's a little bit of really bad thick stuff, so we'll use a file to get rid of that. You don't want to file too much, you don't want this opening become bigger than it's supposed to be, but you also want to make sure that it is clean. Nothing major is taken out. And I like how it looks right now. Maybe a little bit more at the top. Perfect. A few more things over here. And this surface is the most important, since like the bearing, it is attached with bolts, but all the bolts do, they provide enough friction between the hub bearing and the knuckle. So you want those surfaces to be free of any debris and grease. So I'll just use some brake clean. Make sure that this is clean so nothing falls in between those two surfaces when we install it. Because as I said, if it's not clean, if it's not flat, you will just put extra tension on bolts and they might fail under extreme conditions. So you want this to be nice and clean. Okay, so even though we want all the surface be nice and clean, we will apply a little bit of anti-seize inside. So when and if we need to remove the hub next time, it is not as seized as it was this time. Actually, it wasn't too bad, but we want to keep it that way. And also anti-seize will give that extra protection against the corrosion. So here is the new hub, and again I washed those surfaces where the bolts are. We'll just line up those holes now. We'll get the bolts. So those bolts have old Loctite, so we'll get those cleaned on a bench wire wheel. Okay, so the bolts are cleaned. Now we'll just apply some blue Loctite. Two or three of those, and I just realized that we still need to put the brake dust shield on before we put those bolts in. So the dust shield also needs some cleaning, so we'll wash it with the brake clean and put it on. Right, so we'll remove this up one more time. We'll just put this on like that. I'll actually take one bolt, put it from the back, and get it attached so the bearing and the shield stays in place. And when your bolts are nice and clean, it's really easy to get it finger tight and then just torque them. Alright, so those bolts are in place, and right now I need to torque them. I haven't found specific torque for this car. Okay, this won't work really well at all. The torque wrench is way too long, so let me grab the smaller one. I'm just trying to use like a bigger 1/2 inch. It won't fit anywhere. Let me get my 3/8. Okay, so I have my 3/8, and we'll torque those bolts to 84 foot-pounds. Probably just leave camera here. I was not able to find specs for this specific vehicle, but that's what the bolts are. They are M12 10.9 grade, I believe, and for those 84 foot-pounds is recommended, so I'll just go with that. Another one that I was able to find on one website for different year was like 74 foot-pounds, which seems a little bit low. Okay, so this one is done. Now we'll just do the bottom one, so you guys cannot see anything, but there is not much to show. We just torque those bolts. Fantastic. So next we will grab our rotor and clean this surface from rust where it touches the new hub. Usually that's opposite what we do when we change the brakes. We clean the hub and we have a new rotor, but in this case we'll need to brush this. Alright, so a little bit of wire brushing and filing. That surface is clean. Next, in order to protect this nice shiny hub from corrosion, we will just coat it with a thin layer of anti-seize. We'll go all the way around, so it will prevent corrosion, prevent any brakes issues like vibration. Often when that rust starts to build up, it takes the rotor out of balance. It basically becomes kind of wobbly. And those parts are not coated with anything, they are not painted. Don't know exactly why. Probably just costs. But if you grease it well, they will be easy to maintain in the future, as well as it will be much easier to remove them if we need. So now we just need to make sure that this hole is lining up with that hole over there, since we want to put that T30 screw back on. And whole purpose of this screw is just to keep the rotor in place while you install the brakes. So if it happens that you stripped the head or got it broken, don't worry too much, you don't really need it. And as long as you can put a few lug nuts back on while you're installing the brakes. Great. So next, what we want to check, and that's what we should have done while the rotor was off. In similar way, you want to make sure that those surfaces are clean too. That's where your rotor sits. Brake caliper bracket is attached to. And kind of same idea. The bolts just hold those two pieces together, but all the job is done by the friction between those two pieces. So make sure that both sides are cleaned. Nothing is sticking out. So just remove this for now. Get this cleaned. Okay, so we should be good to put it back on. It was difficult to remove it. Hopefully it goes back without big difficulties. Okay, I'll just use rubber mallet to get it in place. Ideally, you would like to pull those pads apart and clean everything, but it's kind of out of the scope of this job. Now we'll just install those bolts. Okay, so both bolts are cleaned. So next we'll apply some Loctite, since there was Loctite when we removed them. I'm just using blue Loctite. Get those started. Same as the bottom one. Right, and we will do same 84 foot-pounds on those ones. Don't quote me on that number. It's just what I would do with that size of the bolt. But if you can find a better number somewhere in a reference, please share. Would be happy to use it in the future. Alright, so those two are torqued. It seems like the last thing is to install this upper control arm. So on the old bolt, I don't see any Loctite, but we will put some anti-seize, especially since it sits in that bushing. With the time, it might become difficult to remove. This might help a bit. So we just need to we'll need to use a jack to push this a bit up. Alright, so let's jack it up so it starts to lining up. Perfect. We're getting quite close. Just use a hammer. So at this point, I'll probably just use my impact and we'll turn the bolt in the direction where it's supposed to go. Just like that. So we'll get the nut started at the same time. Grab our 13/16 wrench. And we will torque it again, just judging by the size of the bolt and considering that we are turning the bolt, not the nut. We'll torque to 140 foot-pounds. So here's 140 foot-pounds. That's tight. Next we'll put the sensor back in. And as I said, make sure that you apply some anti-seize on the sensor itself and also on that 10mm bolt, because if it gets seized, it's really easy to break it. So next we will just put the wheel back on. We'll torque it to 100 foot-pounds. We will clear all the codes. We'll take it for a ride and we'll see what our control module says, if it's still complaining about something or not. Last time I took it for a ride, probably drew like 2-3 minutes, got it to around 40 kilometers per hour, and that's when the message came back on a dash. We'll just get it snug for now. I'll just roughly set the torque on the impact. Great, so we'll lower it down and we'll torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Small correction, we are torquing it to 120 foot-pounds versus 100, since those are M14, not M12 volts. So 120, and I also need to redo the front wheel where I replaced the control arm, because I did 100, so 120 is the way to go. Interestingly enough, this wheel was done and was sitting for a few days, and at 120 it's still basically the same torque, maybe a few degrees, so not that critical probably, but still better to do to the spec. Alright, so we're back to the scanner. We'll quickly erase all the errors. Okay. It's not focusing really well. It's kind of too bright. So we have no faults right now, so we'll take it for a ride. Alright, so I took it for a ride and none of the error messages came back on the message queue. So we'll just scan it one more time and see what it gives us. So we had the steering control module and brake control module issues, and one of the issue that the brake control module did not send the correct data to the steering control. Alright, so here it is, 100% scanned, no codes, no faults, and that's after like probably 10 minutes drive. Went up to 60 kilometers per hour, tried ABS, it's quite slippery, so quite happy with the result. So that magnetic ring was the issue in this case. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe. Please check description to the video for any parts and tools that you might need. I will leave links on my Amazon store. And as always, just do it yourself.